Okay, welcome back. I uploaded or downloaded, whatever they call that, the camera to the computer and eyeballed the angle that I was using, and it was acceptable but not optimal. So I've changed it. I think now I've kind of split the difference and have something that allows me to work freely and still let you see what's going on, as if you were standing in the room here with me. So I'll leave it going and get on to the next step. Now, the sequence of shaping something like this is actually important. Originally, I said you want to start with, I start right behind the button to establish a thickness there. That you can do now or later. But the next thing I'm going to talk about here, you definitely want to do in the proper order, or you'll just be making work for yourself. And that is, if you are in a situation where you're rounding and you want to, this thing is kind of rectangular and you want to get this contour in there, leave that until you get the side profile squared away. That if you got this thing nicely rounded and shaped, and then you got rid of this nasty bump here, recut it, you're back where you started, in the sense that you've now got to do more rounding. So it's easy, and then you chase it. You'll end up a little bit here, next thing, and you'll incrementally approach it, when in this case, you don't need to do it that way. So what you want to establish next is a dead-on, perfectly straight line across the top and across the bottom. You know, that's not a good straight edge, but you understand what I mean. That this thing, Dunhill never ever used a duckbill profile. And I don't mean a saddle stem. That's a different thing altogether. I mean, if it's supposed to be a tapered stem, it was a level line, straight line from the back edge of the button to the end of the shank, and with no exceptions. That's just how they did it. It was like a trademark method. Actually, it was a result of some machinery that they used. But that's another story, and if you didn't adjust the machinery right, and you kind of rush things along, you ended up with your straight line short of the target here. So that's what happened. Anyway, we're going to get the top dead level. There's a bit of a hump here, another one here. It's no big deal, but as long as we're doing it, let's do it right. And we definitely have this big ugly mess here. So I'm going to dive in, get this so that it looks perfect when viewed from the side against a light background, a white wall. Now, I don't mean like a light bulb that's glowing, because that'll mess you up, but just something that gives you a pure black and white type contrast when you're checking this out, as well as follow the gleam lines. That will, hell, you can see irregularities in a polished surface down to way less than a 10,000th of an inch if you're looking at the gleam lines. So learn to read those. Alrighty, so diving in. Now, you might remember from an earlier video, I said do not be tempted to sand or shape a new tapered stem by using something that's broad and go back and forth. That dwell time is going to kill you. You'll end up with a sag in the middle, and it's not recoverable if it gets too far gone. A tool like this, I've got several of them in different widths. They're made from old scrapers, what do you call them, putty knives, and they're good for all kinds of things, but this type of shaping is not one of those things. And I'm keep reminding you of it, or pointing it out rather, because it's so intuitive to a bystander type that would say, yeah, that you want the longest, widest, flattest thing you can get on there to create that flat line, and that is not what you want. It's exactly the opposite of what you want. So if you don't believe me, I mean, there are people who don't. They say, that's ridiculous. I'll just say, go try it. Let me know how it turns out. haven't had anybody come back yet, so you understand. Anyway, something that's good for this are these foam boards. Everybody's familiar with them that goes to shops in a drugstore. They come in different grits, and I like the pink ones and the black ones, and I don't know what they are in sandpaper numbers, but it's not important. Think of the pink one as almost ready to hit the buffer with, but not quite. And this is a material removal tool that's fairly aggressive. And the way you want to attack this is side to side, just like this. And don't worry about arching this or rolling it over. At this point, we merely want to get things so that the line from the end of the shank to the back edge of the button is as straight as you can get it. And we're going to do that first. And here's the way. Now check frequently, because you can still put a low spot where you don't want one doing this. But if you pay attention and you check frequently, you are in total control of where the material gets removed, and dwell time is not an issue. And that's the key. And as I've also told you guys before, when checking for straight lines, the edge of an envelope or an index card, the amount of flex and bend in them is very difficult to, as a practical tool, they're very difficult to use. Get one of these blocks that you can get from, they're made in China anymore, and they're not machinist grade in the sense that no self-respecting hardcore professional machinist would use them, but they're plenty good for this kind of work, using ebonite and wood and so on. And then this doesn't matter how well you line this up, you'll always get the gap you're looking for, and just hold it up against a light and keep her going. So that's the next step. And other than watching me do this, nothing much is going to happen for the next little while. So I'm going to leave it on for about 15 seconds so you can watch me actually do it, and then I'll shut it off and we'll move on to the next. I'll finish it off camera and move on to the next step. Alrighty, I'm just going to keep doing what you're seeing until that line from the back edge of the button to very nearly, not quite literally, but within 1/4 of an inch or so of the, because we've got a little flat spot here to deal with, but pretty close. It's going to come right up to the junction between the end of the shank and the stem itself. And you're going to end up with it's just going to be flat there, but don't worry about that yet. We'll contour it in a minute. So, alrighty then.